Welcome everybody. My name is Rajnikant Patel. I'm the retired executive and author of children's books and will be the moderator today. We will have the speaker introduce the topic for 15 minutes. Then I'll have a question with him for another 15 minutes. And the last 30 minutes, we'll have question and answers with the speaker. Let me introduce our speaker of today. Deepakanandji has a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. He has several years of experience in the industry. From very early childhood, he had an inclination to be celebrated and was in search of the answers to the puzzles of everyday life. His answers were obtained when he received self-realization through the grace of self-realized holistic scientist M. Patel in 1983. Since then, Deepakanandji has pursued his dream to work selflessly to spread the message of holistic inner science and his life-living experience to uplift the entire mankind towards inner peace, harmony, freedom, happiness by answering questions from people. He has devoted all his life to travel throughout the world, and he has attended many conferences and interpersonal relationships. Welcome, Deepakanandji.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Patel, for introducing me, and I welcome you all once again in oneness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, what is holistic science? Holistic science is the same omniscience that opens up within absolutes, arihants, tirthankaras, and gyanis, which gets revealed and become live naturally from time to time through such living absolutes only. In today's time, the same science opened within Gnani Purush, Mr. A.M. Patel of India. He was lovingly called as Dada Bhagwan, although it looked like it is another name, but he categorically said that he was not Dada Bhagwan, the God, but the inner divinity of absolute knowledge and perception of 360 degrees that opened up within him was Dada Bhagwan. The same is there within all of us, but the light of knowledge and perception is obscured by the illusion of self-ignorance within us. Now, what does holistic inner science unfold? It shows how the world operates, how living beings function and interact, how and why things happen to us and what is under control. How can we have a happy, harmonious living? What is the law of karma and what we need to do for happiness, and many, many more. And on the spiritual side, how to progress during our interaction, relations within and without, outside, for a happy, harmonious living. It also talks about, am I the body? Who am I? Etc., etc. What is mine and what is not mine? How minds, intellect, and reflective consciousness, ego works. Understanding happenings and mindfulness to obtain amicable resolution. How to be happy, happy, and always happy in all situations. And finally, is there a way to liberation? All these eternal questions has been bothering mankind from time immemorial, are fundamentally and scientifically answered by holistic science without any ambiguity. Now, before I introduce today's topic, we had some homework from the last session. Do a self-analysis of your interactions. Are they normal, above normal, or below normal? Have you hurt yourself in all these dealings? Does anybody have a feedback? If not, then I will give you my feedback. You know, when I interact without mindfulness, I'm always above or below normal. My ego is 100% kicked in, and I do definitely hurt other people. But I observe when I'm mindful, then the result, my ego seems to have disappeared, and I get results amicably, happy, and I think I make other people happy. So from that, my conclusion, Deepakanandji, is that I'm still a student, doesn't matter what age I am. And one of the things that really hit home was that I need to be a student first at home, and especially with my spouse. And that, has been bothering me. And hopefully, I will try to improve. I have a goal to improve on that one. So that is my observation, Deepakanandji.
Great. That's really very great, and I would say it's a good observation. And everyone needs to observe their life and dealing at home itself, because the relations at home are quite close and at times tricky also. So I'll try to share my experience. See, for a long time, I wanted to know the world history, especially what had happened during World War II and during those times, and, uh, and its effect on the world. Sometimes I even watch animal videos just to see and understand their struggle for food and survival, and how they have to remain alert all the time, having always a lurking fear in them that someone will uh, eat me away. And so I had been watching several YouTube videos on the internet. During all these moments, I could easily um, understand that I was not at peace. See, when you see all these things, the chaos that the world passed through and in the world around, so I was not at peace at all. Also, I recall my younger days when I used to be very aggressive. Then, while I was working, I recall my interaction with my boss and my colleagues, with my customers, how I happened to behave arrogantly and uh, had hurt them several times. And then in the spiritual field, in the satsang, there were several occasions when others got hurt by me, even presently, many a time. I feel something is not right and it disturbs me for a while. So, all these dealings, uh, interactions, and feelings for others and with my own body self are definitely violent. I can see that clearly. And because they hurt others and they hurt me also many a times. And I believe that that is not normal. So my conclusion is that all these mistakes really needs holistic inner science attention and massive corrections. Uh, for my own inner peace, happiness, and freedom, which I keep doing all the time during my easy hours. So, what you said is right. You have to be mindful, and our life is really violent. We keep hurting others, and we must keep a watchful eye on that for our own happiness. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. So now I will introduce today's topic. We are talking about Vyavahar Vignan and how in our interactions we can be happy, harmonious living. And we all know that anger, pride, maya or attachments, and greed are the karmic bonds which are the seeds for the future, for the future fruits. So we have been talking about anger, pride, maya. So today is the last one on greed, what we call lobe. Now, Deepakanandji, when I think about lobe, you know, what is the real meaning of greed in everyday life? And what does holistic inner science talk about is? What is the real science behind it? We are In my mind, we are victims of greed every day. Every moment, there's always something about greed. Uh, so, because we want to gain something, we want to look out for our family, we want to benefit from whatever we do. So, the choice is always between greed and to take more. So, what's wrong about it? Uh, and when I do this with my best intellect, is it the right way to proceed or not? Now, another thing which brings my notice is what is the difference between greed and miser in being miser? Are they the same, or the greed is different and miserness is different? How can we get rid of either of them so eventually, we want to make sure we do not have, we do not make seeds or sow seeds. So because we want to really get out of this karmic bonds and we want to be the freedom as a bird. So can you please throw light on greed? And audience, after that, I'll have some questions with them and then I will open up for questions, okay? So till then, hold on your questions, write down your questions. Thank you.
I really appreciate your analysis. So let us try to go step by step. You asked what is greed in everyday life and what is the holistic perspective of the greed and what is the science behind it. And finally, taking care of the worldly life, we have greed and we have to do so many things to survive. And finally, you also asked that uh, uh, how can we avoid or what is the best way to get out of binding new karmas through greed and what is the seriousness of greed. Okay, so let us try to understand all these. Greed as such should be very easily understood. It is an excessive desire to acquire or possess more and more than what one really needs and deserves, especially with respect to, this is all respect to material wealth. Uh, Greed is the cause of great inner turmoil, disturbance, and conflicts, inside and outside clashes too. This is definitely due to the potent effects of self-ignorance, which leads to wild, baseless comparisons. And we know there is cutthroat competitions, which ultimately results in suffering in our life. In holistic inner science or in the field of spirituality or simply said spiritual science, it is commonly said, and we had been discussing all these shows, uh, say anger, pride, possessiveness, and greed. The order with which it is said, it's a wonderful thing. As we have been saying, nothing comes from nothing. There is always some reason behind things that come up and show up in our life. So this itself really displays or depicts the specific order in which these inner weaknesses live from our being. So it is the anger lives first and then goes pride and then goes possessiveness and then finally greed. So it is the last one to leave from our being, making us 100% perfect. Now, and we have been seeing that through our spiritual pursuits. First, our anger goes, and the last thing that goes is greed. Surprisingly, anger is the first weakness to enter. Rather, the first thing to enter is greed only. So in the field of science, it is called FILO, philo. it stands first in, last out. So philo is an acronym, it is said, a short term used in today's computer science to describe the order in which objects or data are accessed. It is synonymous with LIFO. What it means, last in, first out. So the last thing that enters, that is anger, the first thing to enter is greed, and the last thing leaves our being is greed. So last in, first out. So the anger which entered last to protect or to safeguard our pride, our possessiveness, and greed. So just to evaluate that, first the greed entered, and when I started accumulating more, I started becoming possessive about my possessions. And then with those possessions, I started feeling proud of what I possessed. And then when my possession or when my pride was under attack or my greed was under trouble, then I will use anger to protect them. So that's how this is the progression. And just for your information, the other side of the philo, F-I-L-O, is FIFO, just for information. It is first in, first out. So what we are going to focus is the last in, first out, or first in, last out. Now, here comes the main crux. In the traditional step-by-step progressive spiritual path, where one gradually cleanses himself through his decisive self-efforts, under the eminence of a sound spiritual teacher or a guru, it is called Gunasthan Arohan Marg. So you climb the steps, gradually you purify yourself, you cleanse yourself, and that's how you progress. Now, just to make it short, when one totally frees himself from sensuality, meaning when the very urge for happiness relating to and that involves sense gratification, and especially sexual gratification, even from his belief, that is, he doesn't have thoughts. So it is like when one's mind is freed from every kind of sense happiness, and that is when that one crosses the 9th step and climbs onto the 10th step. This is a very vital step that makes you very powerful. Of course, in the worldly terms, here all the divine angels come at your service, waiting and wanting to do anything you command. Now you just imagine such great people, they are willing to help you and be at your service. What kind of pride you would have? So it's like you say and they would do it for you. But over here, a very subtle level of egoism pops up, and inadvertently it makes you feel, I'm something, I'm better than the rest. Rather, at times you may even feel, I'm the best among all others. And there arises a very subtle level of pride that others should respect me, others should worship me, and with an intense, yet an extremely subtle inner greed for self-gratification, wanting more and more. One can surpass this weakness only through a very prompt self-observation, by living life with total transparency and openness, with everything like open to sky, confessing every mistake openly, and with his conclusive experience of all the past follies that one can clearly and strictly recognize this this attitude of secrecy. You know, don't want to reveal your mistakes. But here, the greed part, and that is so dangerous. So if we really want to perceive his goal, then he has to really work on it. So he recalls all the past follies and about his downfall, and we will really conclude that this is not my goal. That one surpasses the dreadful 10th and the 11th step. So, which is otherwise step of self-immolation only. And when one surpasses this 10th and 11th, so you can say when one crosses 9th, he surpasses sensuality. When he surpasses 10th, he has to free himself from self-worship, self-gratification. And finally cross the 11th step and enter the 12th. That is when he has to take care of the very, very subtle greed, which urges you to go for sense gratification. You want sensual happiness, not sense, but even the slightest of the 5 sense happiness is dangerous, and you cannot enter perfection. And when you really enter the 12th step, you climb the 12th step, that is the step of real pure soul experience of omniscience. When the person truly is like a living God manifest, and this is only and only achievable through the divine grace of a living holistic scientist and his blessing, and with the prudent understanding of this science. Yet at this point, if one tries to do anything through any egoistic self-effort, it would be a disaster with a definite downfall. It is said like back to square one. Now, no one with a sense of self-responsibility and such hard work would ever commit such a blunder in his life. But it is a very serious word of caution. So here, it is only grace that would work to surpass the 10th and the 11th step to enter the 12th step. Now here we can understand and say for sure that this stepping is where the relative achievement and your real achievement, they go together. There cannot be any compromise. So this 12th step is the point of no return. It would eventually open your absolute state of omniscience, and you will finally attain liberation, moksha, or what you call as nirvana. Now you talked about, we talked about the holistic view and how someone can progress and finally attain perfection. And now we will try to see the worldly aspect of greed. You have said that, you have to take care of family and self, and accordingly you, at times you get more and more and you want more and more. So you said, what is wrong about it? Well, there is nothing wrong in doing, but everything is good, fair, and acceptable when it is within limits. We have talked about normality and all that stuff. Otherwise it becomes poison. There is a saying that goes like this. See, the nature is bountiful. It wants to give, it can support everyone's need for survival, but definitely it cannot manage or handle everyone's greed. Today, greed has taken such a dreadful shape. We can understand that everyone wants more and more. You can see in this coronavirus situation, people were so much insecure about things that they took and they bought so much that it became a problem for others. So we can understand the greed. So the greed we are talking about is worldly greed for material possession, and that has caused such a big havoc today. Don't we see around? We should not become that mean and self-centered, because our mother nature has to feed our other brothers and sisters also. Don't you think so? And when you cause any disturbance in the nature, it will reflect back on you only. That is the reason we are not happy today. Um, as the well-known holistic science saying goes, normality is the essence of life. Any abnormality from our end will make us suffer in this perfectly natural order. One can easily manipulate and conveniently escape punishment in the human court of justice, but the nature is absolutely perfect and impartial in its justice, which nobody can escape. Further, you also said that am I not taking anything from others when I have greed? Of course, you are right. Anything more than you need for your survival, you are definitely taking things that is meant for others, which you are breaching the solemn vow, what do you say, Mahavrat, of non-stealing. And it is a violent act. Intellectually, you may justify your act very well, but in the eyes of Mother Nature, it is an act of violence that originated from you. And so to balance this, the nature is going to return it back to you at an appropriate time. You will suffer the agony of what you caused previously. So for your happiness, take as much that is needed for your survival only. And whatever extra you eventually get, you can do a very decent charity, and that is going to pay you back. You also asked that what is the difference between to be greedy and to be a miser, and how can we get rid of this miser attitude, and finally, how can we free ourselves from this greediness? We have already seen what is to be being greedy. It is like to have excessive desire to acquire stuff. And this is with respect to the material wealth. A greedy person would definitely be longing for more and more. But when it comes to spending, this is to be noted, when it comes to spending, the greedy person, he will spend, of course, he will spend judiciously, but he will definitely spend. Now, if you look at the miser, it means although you are resourceful, the person is resourceful, but he lives poorly and many times miserably to save his money. And he wouldn't even spend that is necessary for his own self or for his family's survival. So this is the difference between miser and a greedy person. Now, remember the cardinal rule of learning. Here we have been asking that how can we get rid of the miser attitude and the greed. So the cardinal rule is like, as you see, so you learn. A living exemplary person is the best and ultimate teacher to learn everything in our life. Most essentially, we learn to speak, we learn to walk and eat by seeing and listening to our mother. We have also seen for people, for kids who don't have their mother or their mother passes away at a very young age, then they find it very difficult to grow. The same thing is applicable even to animals. If the puppy is born and the mother passes away or dies, then those puppies are just left to the nature, and most of the time, if they're not taken care, they're eaten away by other animals. Otherwise, the mother protects the puppies. So this got extended in the years to come, and we learned further by listening to other people whom we came into interaction directly or indirectly in the outside world. In fact, with so many different people and so many situations that people learn a lot. So in fact, we can see the reason for people who travel a lot, they come in interaction with many people, and so they are very resourceful. You will learn the best lessons of your life from them. In the same way, holistic scientist has traveled inside and has seen, has understood and known and very nicely learned critical intricacies of the working of different functionalities and faculties of our body self, comprising of the physical body, outer and inner speech, mind, reflective consciousness, intellect, and ego. And that is from grossest to the subtlest faculties of our body self. And he has understood these with clarity and has surpassed all of them from its doership and reached the soul, the soul self, and truly he resides there only as perceiver and knower. And through this immaculate perception as perceiving and knowing, he has revealed gracefully that everyone's body self is naturally working in a parliamentary way among its different faculties, along with its very complex interconnectivity, primarily based on past causes that we call as karmas, which naturally make us pass through compulsory suffering, ultimately making us suffer, but only out of ignorance. And this suffering state today becomes a fundamental cause of our projected doership, causing new karmas for future suffering. However, such situation, holistic science remains perceiver of the suffering and recognizes the sufferer as the body self, and hence he remains separate and remains totally unaffected, getting away with the karmas without causing new ones. So when you come across someone who is free from these inner weaknesses of anger, pride, possessiveness, greed, likes and dislikes, you will naturally learn from him and free yourself from these weaknesses and ultimately from greed also. Here lies the importance of the living master, holistic scientist. But until you come across one, there are several media, that is audio, video, and other literature available on holistic inner science. We also have so many living testimonials of this science called Mahatmas, or they are the self-realized ones, and who are sincerely treading the path of holistic science. And holistic science has revealed several things categorically, that nature has everything for your survival, but not for our greed and luxury. Then why have greed at all? It's like when the nature protects and supports every other living being, and it's going to support us also. But we have to understand this science, and that's how we can free ourselves from this greed factor. Further, we can say, just to take a little more time, holistic inner science has revealed that by our very innate nature, we are soul, we are pure consciousness, we are omniscient, omnipotent and blissful, but we are not aware of that due to our self-ignorance. And to be greedy is to know, we must know who we really are. And it is quite fair and justified because it is our true nature. When we know this, then we won't commit any mistake. Rather, we would be freed from all our mistakes. So now we can say, let us understand about this free thing. It is our nature that we easily get tempted after free things. So it's like when you get an advertisement that things are free, you jump into it. Of course, there's no problem getting into such thing, but the attitude of going after free things is very dangerous. It weakens our mind and makes you very greedy. Here, holistic science has revealed there is nothing free in this world. It is your own thing that you get. So it says, mind your attitude when dealing with free things. So this is how we can address greed in our life, as our inner weakness, and we can easily fight and surpass that with the help of holistic inner science. Thank you so much.
Thank you for introducing this excellent topic. Yeah, I have a lot of questions, but I'd rather open up to the audience first. And if there are any questions from the audience,
Yes, I have a question, Deepakanandji. So, when you say that, like we need to work on our needs. So, if I am into the technological business and I have to continuously keep on reinventing and re-innovating about what's new, and one is the vision of the company. Say that I want to take this company or take some projects to the next level. So is that also a part of greed, and how do I manage that?
Okay, very good. I will say it's a good analysis on your part, but we have to accept certain facts of our dramatic worldly life, and which the holistic scientists have accepted it, but with a word of caution. So there is nothing wrong to pursue what you have said, but what you should be doing, then while doing all this, because you have to get away with your own discharging karmic effects also. So just by getting aware of these weaknesses, you cannot just stop it. But holistic science teaches us how you will manage your weaknesses. It will not make you incur more losses. Rather, with the minimum loss, you will progress. So at times you see that your greed is really pushing you far ahead, but you are like helpless. So in this situation, holistic science has so wonderfully uh, told us, or rather it tells us that there is a factor of forgiveness, that whatever mistakes are committed, when you are correcting yourself, because things just happen, these inner weaknesses forces you to do several things. But as perceiver, as observer, you know that, hey, I'm doing wrong. So keep correcting. So that correction will help you progress. Although you are driven away by your greed, you also know for sure, and many times to be in the market, you have to keep going. Doesn't matter. But that factor of correction will keep you steady and your inner balance. You will not lose your inner balance and you will progress.
but that factor, Deepakanandji, should not be based on humanity and human interactions.
True, it is all these things are there, but certain times that inner force, circumstantial pressures are such that you are compelled to do certain things. But then that factor of correction is always there. We are not uh, saying that you don't do this, because many times you experience that it is not possible not to do. So it just happens because things just happen. Maybe at times out of our knowledge. What I mean, subconsciously things are working and we just happen to do things. But that watchful eye of mindfulness will always catch these mistakes and help us correct our mistake. So when you are correcting, then eventually things will fall in its place.
Well, thank you very much. It was a good question. Dr. Gandhi has a question.
Surely, yes.
Please unmute yourself. Please unmute you. I cannot unmute you. Okay, now go ahead. Go ahead.
Jai Satchidanand.
Jai Satchidanand.
હવે આપણે તો જ્ઞાન લીધા પછી એના જ્ઞાતા દ્રષ્ટા રહ્યા, બરાબર છે? તો ક્રોધ માન માયા લોભની જે સિક્વન્સ છે એને દાદાએ એવું કીધું છે કે 3 વર્ષ સુધી જો ખોરાક ન આપીએ તો મરદાલ થઈ જાય. પણ એ ખોરાક અપાઈ કેવી રીતે જાય છે? એ કઈક એટલે જાગૃતિની કચાશ છે કે
Okay,
નાના રસ્તા?
let us analyze that. When a situation comes and you get angry, doesn't that happen? Yes, it does happen. And someone at home or your surroundings say, doctor, this is not good. This doesn't look good. You're a doctor. It looks so bad. Then at times, you'd say, no, this was justified. He needed that. Otherwise, people don't improve. They don't change. And what have you done? You have supported your anger. In fact, in such moments, you have to say, I'm sorry. This is not a professional should deal with situations like this. There is always a better way to do. I'm sorry for that. Now here you have not supported. Same way, when it comes to pride, then we act like that. And when someone says, hey, what is this? You're boasting yourself. Then say, no, no, no. You have to do, at times you have to do. So when you justify your mistakes, then you are supporting your mistakes. And then it gets extra life. And that is where we fail to progress. So this is how we keep supporting our weaknesses, and it gets life and it gets going. So it is said that the minimum time what forensic scientists have evaluated, he has said that if you starve them for 3 years, then they will go forever. They will not wake up again and bother you.
Okay, thank you very much. Shaila Rao, you have a question?
You have to unmute, please.
Is she there?
Yeah, she's there. Please
Oh.
unmute.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question about the 2 words that first Rajni Bhai used, Vyavhar Jnana, and Deepakanandji, you just mentioned about worldly knowledge. So I'm just referring to the calendar which talks about that. So it says Vyavhar kya hai? Itna hi yadi samajh aaye to bhi moksha ho jaye. What does that mean, Vyavhar Jnana? And व्यवहार समझेंगे तो निश्चय समझ में आएगा. That is so intriguing. Just now when someone asked about if he wants to progress in his company, is that agreed? So that is like worldly knowledge. So how does Vyavhar Jnan come in here?
That's what you see with your eyes, with what you feel through your senses is worldly knowledge. And worldly knowledge and worldly interactions and whatever we come across in our worldly life through our 5 senses is, as we have known and understood, it is karmic effect. Okay? Number 1. So when you understand that, why does things happen in my life? Then we know that it is because of the previous cause. Without a cause, there cannot be any effect. So when you understand that all that happening and the suffering related to that happening is all worldly, that is Vyavhar Jnan. Are you getting it?
It's very intriguing.
I'll tell you. See, these 5 sense suffering, what we pass through day in and day out, 24/7, there is no moment when we don't have 5 sense suffering. Now, in the language or in the words of holistic science, suffering means happiness and unhappiness both. Why it is called suffering? Because it comes and goes. but the nature of pure soul is bliss, which remains forever. So anything that is perpetual, that stays forever, is nischay or real. And that which is temporary is relative. So all this suffering, what we pass through and encounter in our life, is vyavhar. What does vyavhar means? That which was caused previously gets effected out now. But not understanding this science of vyavhar, we believe that it is happening now, and the person who is instrumental for my happiness or suffering, I blame that person instead of blaming the causes as my karmic effect. So while encountering such suffering, we get into it and we further cause, rather we cause new karmas through projected doership. That person is a mere instrument, a delivery person in the scheme of Mother Nature. But we believe and tag him, stamp him, that because of him or her, I suffered. And when that happens, you have bad feelings for them. And when that originates from your body self, it gets caused in a very subtle form, for which you have to be born again and you have to come back again. Did you get that? In the very presence of the pure soul, the all-knowing Almighty God inside. Not knowing, see, our body has two aspects, fundamentally two aspects. One is the activity part, which is the body self part, and the other is the soul part, that is soul self part. We say, I do. In relation to the five senses and the body parts, we say, I ate, I do, I walk, right? In relation to senses, I say, I see, I know, I hear, I scent, I taste. Now, on the other side, you say, I know. So that knowing part is also there and the activity part is also there. And along with the activity part, you have the five sense suffering or five sense knowledge. But that knowledge is temporary. Happiness comes and goes, unhappiness comes and goes. What you feel good comes and go, what you don't feel good also comes and go. But that knowing part is permanent. Do you feel that?
Yeah.
That knowing part is perpetual. The activity part begins and it ends. The five sense information comes and go. In the sense, there is a beginning of that suffering related to eyes, or related to hearing, or related to scent, related to touch. It comes and goes, but the knower is permanent. It remains forever. It knows that suffering came and suffering went away. Daylight came, the day ended. Nightfall came, night ended. An activity started, an activity ended. So that is all vyavhar jnana, relative knowledge, relative happening, which is full of activity and five sense suffering. But the knower is permanent. So what is happening, we as I, out of ignorance, we claim doership of the relative happening, of the bodily activities and the five senses. And on the other side, we also say, I know. So that knowing part and the activity part, there is a mixture of that. There is no clear line of demarcation between the knowing part and the activity part. And holistic science focuses on that clear line of demarcation that is activity part. If you try to be egoistic about activity part, then you will not be able to understand the fights and suffering, and you will end up projecting new karma. But if you be as a perceiver and knower of these activities and the fights and suffering, then you will see and you will remain and you will prevail as knower only. It's quite subtle, but that's how I can be egoistic about doing. What is happening, I claim doership of that. And it is not continuous in the sense it doesn't sustain. When everything is fine, I do. I claim doership of good things. But when it is bad or negative thing, I put it on others. I blame others. So we are not consistent with it. But when we do like this, then those feelings, they pop up in our body self, and that becomes cause for future birth, for future suffering, because it goes out. That's why it is said, pap, good deeds or bad deeds, they both cause new karma. If you become doer of those deeds. But if you become perceiver of the deed, whatever was caused, good or bad, pap or punya, you will pass through the suffering associated with pap and punya, and at the end of it, you'll be freed from all karmas without causing new karma. That will happen to be your last life, and that is what is called as salvation, liberation, nirvana, or moksha.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have time for one question. Anybody? Oh, Kintan bhai.
Deepakanandji, you have two different qualities. One is misery, and the other one is a greedy. How, from these two, how can you get to the normality that should not affect your daily life? You know, you don't go beyond all this to achieve your goal. What can you?
Right. Let us analyze. Number one, as we have explained, greed is the desire for wanting more and more. A greedy person, when it is needed, he will spend judiciously. But a miser, although he is resourceful, he will cut corners. Even when it is necessary, he will not spend, because this miserly attitude doesn't allow him to spend, because his goal is not to spend. Whereas for the greedy person, yes, he wants more, but when it is necessary, he will spend also. This is a very thin line of demarcation, that miser will ignore what is even necessary for his survival or for his family. But a greedy person will definitely be wanting more and more, but when it is necessary, he will spend. Now, how to address both of these? Number one, when we understand, like, let us try to analyze that these animals, how much do they carry? Do they have a bank account? Do they have a fat bank account, we can say? No. Even like certain animals, they save their or guard their prey, hide their prey. Even some birds, they hide their food at times. But that is only that much. But look at our humans. How much do they accumulate? How much do they have? How much do they accumulate? How much do they keep accumulating? So this is what is this? There is a factor of fear. There is a factor of insecurity which makes people do all this. Now, if you look at the animals, when we look at those learned people, those enlightened people, then they have never pursued this path of accumulating. The reason is they know that till I survive, the nature is going to provide me with all I need for my survival. So what I must focus is on the good or bad part of my being so that I get away from this wandering. You understand? So when you understand the science of life and nature, that how nature is protecting me, supporting me, providing me with everything I need, but my intellect and the surrounding peer pressure makes me feel like that, make me behave like that, make me judge things like that, and that's how I live my life. That's why I am greedy, and at times I am a miser.
So, in other words, I should only keep as much as I need, maybe a little bit more, but
Yeah. It's like, you know, I give you one example. Sorry to interrupt you. I'll give you an example. If you are building a thing, in the technical world, you can say, if you are building a bridge, then you will keep a certain factor of safety, say 5 times. In certain situation, maybe 10 times, 15 times. But you will not keep the factor of safety like 5,000 times. Do you understand? I'm just giving a very, I'm just exaggerating the thing, but you can have a factor of safety, reasonable factor of safety, and have for your safe life. It's fine. But when it is like multifold, when anybody can understand that you're not going to use all that stuff all your life, maybe for your 5 generations or 10 generations, but still you are wanting more and more. That is where you are snatching away things that really meant for others. And this is a very subtle form of violence, and nature punishes you very badly for that.
yes,
That is the thing.
that is
And
true.
also one more thing, because I had that attitude, I was never spending. I always, spending means I never had that attitude. I was always trying to show off that, no, I want to pay for the today's bill, but I'll just make a drama, but I will really not part with the money. We talked about a living example. So when I saw my senior, he was not 1 or 2 years senior to me, and he was very cool. Anytime he said, nobody is going to put his hand in his pocket. I'm the boss today, and I'll take care of the bills today. And still, I just create a drama. But of course, finally, he will only pay. But when I saw this, somehow I learned, and I came out of that attitude. So when you see things, you can easily learn. So the perfect master, the perfect teacher is the holistic scientist. When you see him, when you hear about his life stories, how people have interacted with him, and when we get to know that, then we get a big inner strength that if he could do it, he survived, and he lived an exemplary life. He showed path to so many people. Oh, I can also do it. So our decision changes. And once the decision changes, it will come into our being in a short time. That belief doesn't change. But when you see, how we say seeing is believing, when you see, you believe, and that's how your decision changes. When your belief changes, things will change. You will start saying, there's no need to accumulate so much and all that.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deepakanandji. I will wrap it up, and in the meantime, you can think of wrapping it up with the homework also.
Surely, yes.
Okay. We talked about greed today. It's a desire to accumulate more and more, even if you don't use it or don't want it, or not. You really don't need it. Greed brings conflict, comparison, competition, headaches, heart attacks, etc., etc. We expect others to respect us. We expect others to sing our glory. And if you don't get it, again, there's a problem. So these are the downfall of greed. And if you come to normality, you can take care of the greed. And miser is you even don't spend for yourself or your own survival. So you need to adjust there and at least be comfortable with what you have. With that one, Deepakanandji, can you summarize and give us the homework?
Surely, yes. Now, based on today's topic on greed, we will try to analyze our own life, that how much greedy or miser I am. Just make an evaluation, make a candid evaluation, impartial evaluation, and have it written in my journal. So it will always be there for my reference and my own self-analysis. Number one. And second thing is that see, this greed factor is such a tricky one. The grosser part is very easy to understand. You want more and more. What does that mean? That if I want more, I get more, I take more, which is meant for others. So it's a gross violence. Now on the subtle side, when I try to take and relish or enjoy the 5 sense happiness, then that is not my happiness. It's a dependent happiness. So when I depend on others, the 5 senses, they don't belong to me. Body self is not mine. Although it is there, in the sense, for my life it is there, but that is not my happiness. I just try to focus on one or drive your attention towards one thing. The holistic scientist, he never relished or tried to take happiness from the 5 senses. So it's like one quick example. In the night, while he's sleeping and he is covered with a sheet, with a blanket, and if it gets cold, then the body will naturally want to cover it. Then he will, okay, the upper part you have to cover. Then he will remove it from his legs. He will open his legs. So he says, I don't want to take happiness from the warmth. Did you understand?
Yes, yes.
So
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say, the very urge to take happiness from outside, when I am myself abode of infinite bliss, and when I take happiness from others, my true happiness shatters. So to experience that and be totally on the real side, gradually, as much you can, it's an observation. We have to make an observation. So the homework is like this. We will try to evaluate how much I depend for my happiness on outside things. So it's like little warm and I'll turn on the fan, maybe turn on the air conditioner, like that.
Okay.
So we will make an evaluation that how much greedy we are to take happiness from outside thing, that is body self happiness, whether it is related to doing, related to accumulating, or the 5 sense happiness.
That's a pretty good homework. And audience, we have come to the conclusion of the 4 karma binding aspects of our life. So we will now embark on a series to see what are the gauges, or how do you gauge ourselves in our everyday life, you know, against those. So we'll be taking up one at a time, and we will look at our 9 divine code of conducts and see how they fall into this, and start gauging ourselves. So Deepakanandji, thank you very much for taking time to come to and address and have a nice conversation with us. And audience, thank you very much. And please note your homework, and this, because this is the one which will really bring us to reality. So thank you very much, everybody. Good night.